So, game genres are broken, because what's an adventure game anyway? Was where I titled this, because I have a huge issue with the way adventure and action and terms like that are used for games, especially in like storefronts. But everyone knows that an adventure game has lots of pointing and clicking and pixel hunting and obscure item puzzles where you combine honey with cat hair to make a mustache, and they're all by Tim Schafer or Ron Gilbert, or both. But that's not really that true when you get into storefronts like Steam and GOG and Humble and itch.io. Adventure looks more like this. You have Mirror's Edge, which is a first-person parkour game. You have Banner Saga, which is a tactical combat, narrative-heavy drama. You have a game where you shoot Nazis in the testicles. I don't think Ron Gilbert made that. And you have The Sims, which is entirely player-driven narrative, hasn't really got puzzles, definitely wasn't written by Tim Schafer. This is all of the genres combined from Steam, GOG, and itch.io. 14, 15, I removed early access, because that's just a Steam genre. Action, adventure, indie. Can you think of like every indie game ever made fitting into one genre the way it does in film or music? Like, that's insane. That term is meaningless now. Strategy, platformer, puzzle. Most of these genre terms come from the Atari. Like, that's how long they've been around. Like, games have changed so much since then, but our language around genre is the same as when it was when, like, E.T., the video game, came out. It's bad. It's so bad. Like, casual as a genre tells you nothing about tone or narrative or style. Same with free-to-play. It sucks. It's bad for devs. It's bad for players. I hate it as a developer. I hate it as a player. You get thousands and thousands and thousands of games being sorted into 15 categories, which means if your game is just like an adventure game, it's against thousands. Like, it is just in one pool with thousands of games. It's impossible to find in like clicking through page after page after page after page. Yeah, more categories means like, less categories, more in each category. It sucks. Bad for players because it's really, really hard to find what you like about games if that language isn't out there in the ecosystem. Like, there's no niche, like, oh, I like, my best example is I hate stealth games and I hate horror games. I love Alien Isolation. Like, I have no idea, like, what is so appealing to me about that game, and there is no genre of, like, space narrative terror. I wish there was. I wish I could just, like, click a button on Steam and see all the games that are kind of like Alien Isolation that would just scare the shit out of me in space. Emre, please scare the shit out of me in space. Yeah, it's bad for everyone. It also ends up with like tons of weird stuff like games being sorted into categories that really make no sense. Danganronpa is a visual novel murder mystery. It's great. It also uses pink in really interesting ways because all of the like blood effects are in these neon colors. It's super good. It is not an action game. It is definitely not an action game. And Papers, Please is a game where you like struggle with a boring, soul-crushing job because your family is sick and you're in a like third world country and your government is terrible. It's not it's not Bejeweled. It's not casual. It is soul-crushing. Why is it casual? There's nothing casual about that experience. And yeah, we get it. It's bad. I make things that are weird and definitely don't fit into those genres, so that it sucks for me. I tend to have to, look online and see what other people are saying, and like, oh, maybe it's kind of one thing or the other. It's never really a clean fit into those 15. And yeah, as a player, I like Alien Isolation. I have no idea, like, what term I could possibly search for with that. And who am I? As we said, I make Malodrops and Killing Time at Light Speed, which don't fit into clean genre types. When you think about those 15, most of them come down to like how we interact with them. They're first-person shooters, they're puzzles, they're mechanic-driven things. When we talk about genres in art, it's about movements, it's about tone, it's about like a group of artists making similar art that expresses things in a similar way. I want you to try and like think in your head like how many genres of film there are. Like if you go into a video store and think like just kind of roughly what that number could be. And same thing with music if you're more of a music person. Like think of just like how many different genres of music there could be. You ready? There are like 200 electronic music genres. And they all have really clear definitions. And it comes down to like things as minute as like the different drum beat patterns and looping techniques. In games, like we don't have anywhere near this clarity of like what a distinct group of things could be. And it really hurts us. And we need to talk about genre in better terms. And we don't have the hundreds of years of like scholarly debate that music has to define things. And we don't have the decades that film does. So it needs to come from us. When we talk about film genres, it's about tone and content. When we talk about music genres, it's about tone and composition and the lyrics. When we talk about games, it's mechanics. It's like going into a video store and like all of the genres are like mini-series or film or like TV series. You'd never find like sci-fi. It's sorting things by like their shape. So when it comes to talking about your game, genre can be like a really useful thing. Yeah, developers tend to be really bad at it. I was super bad. I was terrible. I used to talk about Malodrops and like it's kind of like Fez. It's kind of puzzle-y, and developers tend to like to talk about games in reference to other games. You know, we say it's Doom but with a paint gun, and that's Splatoon, which is great. Or it's this but with this, or it's this meets this, and it ends up just sounding derivative all the time, and it just kind of makes things sound boring. And we now sort of are getting emerging genres that are just like references to games. Anyone who's about my age or older will remember that first-person shooters used to be called Doom clones, because like Doom was the big first-person shooter that was a reference point for everyone. There were first-person shooters before Doom. There were roguelikes before there was Rogue. And there were games where you killed monsters and took their souls and used those souls to upgrade weapons so much longer before Dark Souls. But everything is now called the Dark Souls clone because that's the biggest success story. Instead, we can't talk about third-person action-adventure RPGs because all of those sound like just garbage soup. Because all those words mean nothing, right? Like, third-person, cool, that's a camera technique. Action kind of describes like most games. Adventure, again, meaningless. And RPG, cool, you have stats. Like, they all describe input, they don't describe tone, they don't describe feeling. They don't describe how it feels to play your game, and that's what genres should do. Yeah, these were some examples of like, I was trying to remember how I used to describe my games when like they were in development and bad. So yeah, Malodrops was a sliding block puzzle and a platformer thing, and it was kind of like, I always used to reference Chip's Challenge, but depending on your age, Pokemon, or if you're really young, Undertale. Oh God, I got so many kids at PAX telling me it was like Undertale, or it was ripping off Undertale. And Killing Time at Lightspeed is like a visual novel, I guess, but it's like Twitter. And so this is what that looks like. This is Malodrops, if you haven't seen it before. And this is Killing Time at Lightspeed. So Twitter, but in DOS, because it's 80s sci-fi as hell. But if your game is like another game, think about why. I had a ton of people telling me that Malodrops was like Fez, and to me it isn't, but those two games actually do relate to each other. They're both games where you manipulate the space as well as the character. I didn't end up talking about Malodrops in being a spatial manipulation game, because that's not quite as common as what I went with was Gravity Puzzle, which seemed to click with more people, but I definitely experimented with those terms. If you're in doubt about how to describe your game, and there's someone who's making a game that's similar, talk to them. I kept getting people telling me that Killing Time at Lightspeed was a visual novel, and I knew that wasn't right, because a visual novel is like a really distinct thing. Also, with the genres, there are like 400 visual novels on Steam, and that's not a category. That's bullshit. Like, that's not a category in any storefront, and that's insane. But I reached out to Nina Friedman and said, like, this is kind of like Sibel and her story in the way you experience it non-linearly and poke around in it. And she said, oh yeah, I've talked to them as well. We call that narrative investigation games. I was like, oh, sweet. I now have that thing to talk about, and if someone says, oh, hey, I like your game, are there things like it? I go, yes, it's narrative investigation. There are, like, here's a list of all the things that are in that genre. Go explore and have fun. And that makes it easier to, like, cross-reference things. If I say my game's narrative investigation, if they search for that, they will find my game and their games, hopefully. Also, don't be afraid to just make shit up. There's an iOS puzzle game called Beglitched that is a like 90s hacker theme, but everything is cute and pink and purple, and they called it Cyberpink, which is adorable, because it's like Cyberpunk, but it's pink. And they used that term on every messaging they had, so if you search for Cyberpink game, you would probably find Beglitched really quickly from that. It's like, it's not a thing in itself. Read-only memories called it bubblegum cyberpunk, but those two things are like pretty close to each other. And like we should be having like a cyberpunk, cyberpink, bubblegum cyberpunk genre, so we can collect all those games, because there are tons of them at the moment. There are tons of neo-endearment, which is another like category that doesn't exist anywhere. Which is a group of sort of like San Francisco, trying to think what the other place just outside of San Francisco is. Mostly San Francisco-based developers making really cute, like Steven Universe, like cute games. And those are generally collected as neo-endearment, but you can't, like, there's no category on Steam for neo-endearment. There's tags, but tags where users get to do that are really bad now, because people use that to bitch about games that they don't like. So you'll find games being used with really inappropriate tags, and that's not cool. But yeah, make up genres. If nothing out there describes what you're doing, come up with a term and put it out there as much as you can. So this is how I talk about my games now. Malodrops is a gravity puzzle. And then I get into, it's where two Kiwis rescue their eggs in a shattered world. Sweet. Succinct. You know what the genre is. It has its own collection. Killing Time at Lightspeed is a narrative investigation game where you connect with friends as you're flying away from Earth. I get away from all that trying to describe what the mechanics are, and I just say, it's this is the story. If you stop mumbling over what the input is, because like that doesn't, it's like saying, okay, you're going to go into a cinema and you're going to sit in a seat and watch a thing on a screen and pictures are going to happen really fast. Like, people know that they're going to play a video game. Please stop talking about games by saying you're going to be playing a video game. Yeah, I've talked a bit about how to work around the stores. Make sure that those like genre definitions are in your marketing and your messaging, and like, you know, use hashtags. That's a cool way of like letting other people permit themselves to also participate in that genre. Itch.io and Steam will let you tag your game with custom tags. Use those, talk to other games, see what they're tagging their games with, because then you'll hopefully be in the same pool as the games that you think are relevant to you. So how do we get new game genres, and how do we learn from board games? Board games do game genre better than we do. Much better than we do, because they don't talk about mechanics as being genre. They talk about theme and mechanics. And every game, if you look at the descriptive text on a board game, it will clearly state what the theme is. You know, this is a samurai themed game. This is a World War II themed game. And then it will describe the mechanics. And board game mechanics are like really, really clearly defined as like set collecting, worker placement, tile laying games. They describe the number of players, they describe the play length, and like recommended ages. Those are like icons on every board game box you'll see. And you can like at a glance probably figure out if a game is right for you, because you know like the mechanics, the theme. Yeah, it's probably, and like play length. Oh, cool, it's kind of like casual 20-minute experience. We don't use play length to define games on Steam. There's no way of like picking like, yeah, I just really want a 2-hour experience. No, you'll find like 80-hour RPGs, probably. 80-hour RPGs are great, I love them, but I can't do them in a week. And also what equipment you use, which is really cool for accessibility. Like if you say, like, yeah, it works with this controller, this controller, this controller, works with your Vive, works with, you know, weird move controllers, you can rebind the keys, all that sort of stuff. Like, telling people how they can play your game is really cool, especially when you vary that between operating systems. But games go beyond what is capable in board games. Length versus depth is a really interesting idea. So Dota is a game that probably lasts 45 minutes per game, right? That's short for a video game, except that is a hugely complex experience that takes hundreds and hundreds of hours to master. Like that is a deep, deep game. And that is a way to like show your game is different to other games that are, you know, maybe similar styled. You can describe your game in terms of like what assumed knowledge, right? Like, could this be someone's first game? Are they going to be totally screwed? Like, if they get into the new Kingdom Hearts game, like there are like 18. Someone says, "Oh, cool! I like Disney. I'm going to pick up the Kingdom Hearts 3 when it comes out." There are 18 Kingdom Hearts games, even though it's Kingdom Hearts 3, with huge amounts of like franchise knowledge needed. General gaming knowledge. Is it a fast-paced shooter? Like Overwatch probably requires a lot more existing game knowledge than we would think. Like, it is a first-person, fun, cute shooter. There is a lot of processing needed, like, to react to things in that environment. And dedication and emotional cost, which I really like. Like, games can wreck you. Games can be such an emotional trip, and sometimes people aren't ready for that, and some people want that. And tying that into how you describe your game genre-wise, like, yeah, this is a gut-wrenching experience. Cool. People who want a gut-wrenching experience, it's like we're marketing to people who like space. We're marketing to everyone. You're marketing to people who want gut-wrenching experiences, tell them right up front. Tell them that your game is emotionally costly. It will make you make hard choices. Think about these things when you're coming up with your ideas for, what to call your game's genre. And games are art. So we should stop thinking about game genre the way we think about 80s electronics. We should think about them like art. The 10, 15 categories we see in stores aren't enough. They're outdated and shit. And all marketplaces are straining under sticking to them. We need to think of something better. And as developers, we're probably going to be the ones to do that. Sorry. We're stuck with this. Gaming academics haven't been around for long enough to totally reformat the stores. And genres tell people what they're going to feel. Going into a Western what to expect from a Western. Going into a sci-fi space opera. What a space opera is. Talk about your games in terms of that and what they're going to feel rather than it's a first-person shooting game with physics. And a better gaming vocabulary helps everyone. It helps us talk about our games. It helps consumers search for games. It helps press, talk about the games in relation to, gaming history. It helps historians, track the flow of genres. Cool, we had Onimusha, Devil May Cry, and now Dark Souls. You can see a progression. You can see how games build on each other when you talk about genres and how genres will relate to the things that came before it. Add to it, come up with your own stuff, and use it to market your game. That's me.